Hello, Connecticut, and welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast. The title basically says it all. I'm Nancy Barrow, and I will be delving into this new state program and how it can help you and your family. This podcast will give you information you should know about Connecticut paid leave and maybe just a little bit more. Connecticut paid leave brings peace of mind to your home, family, and workplace. Welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast. August is National Wellness Month, and that fits in pretty well with the author I am talking to. Lauren Tettenbaum is a licensed clinical social worker in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Florida. She is a women's rights advocate and writer dedicated to supporting and empowering women through life transitions. With experience as both a lawyer and a psychotherapist, Lauren specializes in counseling women navigating identity shifts related to motherhood, career, and reproductive health. And she frequently contributes thought leadership to media and professional organizations. And she's the author of the acclaimed 2025 book out last month, Millennial Menopause, Preparing for Perimenopause, Menopause, and Life's Next Period. Love the plan words, Lauren. And you can find out more about Lauren at thecounselor.com, and that's spelled COUNSE, and we'll put that in the show notes for everybody. But congratulations on your book, and thank you so much for being a guest on the Paid Leave Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, tell me about your women's advocacy. Tell me, when did that part of your journey start?
I have always been an advocate for women. Even as a kid, I would volunteer with women's rights organizations, and I interned at Planned Parenthood and with the Women's Law Project in Philadelphia, where I went to college. And it was a course I took in college that led me to pursue my law degree and also my master's in social work, because I thought that those professions would best equip me to make a difference on behalf of women.
Is that because of your mom? Was your mom a really big influence on you there? Or was this just something that really was innate in you?
I would actually say both my parents instilled in me this drive to help others, to use my privilege and my voice to advocate for those less fortunate. But women in particular was my population of choice. My mom also is a social worker and always worked with the elderly, which is not a population that I have much experience with. But from a young age, I've just always felt that pull. I would read novels and nonfiction about women in different parts of the world, and it just shaped who I am and has always been a part of me.
It's pretty interesting that you knew so young that social work and being a lawyer would help you. Why the double degree? Is that something? Are they a common dual degree?
They're somewhat common. Social work is psychology based, but also with a component of social justice. And so I felt like my passion for shaping policy and for being an advocate really did fit well with the social work curriculum and career path. But to be honest, I fell in love with a reproductive rights and law class and thought that law school would be the best fit. And when I got there, I really hated it. So I thought what I was missing was this direct services piece and ability to look at things through the lens of mental health and compassion. And so I supplemented my education with my master's in social work.
Well, in your bio, it mentions that you help women through life transitions. What transitions are you talking about, and how do you help them?
Sure. So first of all, I think everyone deserves and needs extra support during transitions. That can be graduating from school, a move, having a baby, a new job, a new relationship, or a breakup, anything like that. And the ones that I primarily focus on, I work with women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s for the most part. And I work with many emerging adults who are starting in new cities or starting new jobs, leaving their families of origin, new relationships. And then the women who are trying to build their families, perhaps navigating fertility struggles, and then that perinatal period of being pregnant or building their family, and the postpartum period, young parenting. and then perimenopause.
Yeah, it seems really interesting, the reproductive mental health aspect of all of that. How do you help women with that? Because I do feel like the mental health aspect is really an important component.
It certainly is. We know that women in the perinatal period, for example, experience up to 1 in 5 experience a mood disorder. And we also know that perimenopause is the most vulnerable time for a woman's mental health in her reproductive lifespan. So mental health plays a huge role in our well-being, in our physical health, in our productivity, and of course, in just how we feel, right? And the implications are very extreme and intense and deserve all the attention that we can give them. And so the way that I help them, I provide cognitive behavioral and feminist therapy. So I do focus specifically on the struggles that women in particular face in our society. And I help women think about their actions, behaviors, and the way that they're interpreting others around them. We work on interpreting those things in a more positive or neutral way so that they don't fall into the anxiety and depression and stressors that they're experiencing. I will also add that simply providing psychoeducation on the fact that mood disorders or mood symptoms are quite common and that they're not alone as they struggle through whatever they're dealing with, that support and that awareness that they're not alone and they're not, imagining this or that there's something wrong with them, that can be a huge, huge help.
Do you suggest support groups for women who are all going through this at one time, whether it's perimenopause or whether it's perinatal? Do you suggest that they go to support groups and so they aren't feeling alone? There's strength in numbers.
Yes, I love support groups. I think they're so powerful and so beautiful. And I think you can really connect with people, even if you don't otherwise have other things in common. I run groups for moms who are transitioning back to work following their leave. I've done a variety of groups on a variety of topics, and I think that they're a beautiful thing. I think it's really amazing to be able to show up in your sweatpants, feeding the baby, whatever it might be. If you're perimenopausal, even just having a sort of group chat or an online forum can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Do you ever incorporate writing therapy or journaling therapy because you are a writer?
I love journaling. I recommend it frequently. Not everyone is a writer, but I do, especially when we see patterns of behaviors and communication patterns. I do strongly recommend that my clients write down what their initial reactions to whatever preceded their reaction is. Write down your initial reaction. Don't send it. Don't share it. Don't read it out loud quite yet. Take a pause. And then let's revisit, because your feelings are always valid, but the way that you act upon them might not be the most effective. And usually when our emotions are heightened, we're not communicating at our optimal level. So
That's great. That's great advice. Yeah. Don't send it, for sure.
Don't send it. I always say, if you're writing an email, please put your own email address in the to line, because things can happen.
Yeah. You may wake up tomorrow feeling completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
You often do.
Yeah. Let's talk about becoming a psychotherapist. How'd that happen? You were a licensed social worker and a lawyer, but that wasn't enough for you. You had to be a psychotherapist. How did that happen for you?
Sure. So again, what I love about social work is that it is based on psychology and a lot of therapeutic modalities, but with this added component of social justice and advocacy. So when I finished my master's program in 2010, I didn't think I wanted to be in a clinical setting. And I instead focused on law, and I worked in the legal industry for 10 years. But whenever I worked directly with clients, it was through a social worker's lens, very compassionate, comprehensive care, always thinking about their mental health. And long story short, I became a mom myself. I realized that maternal mental health was severely lacking in terms of what we provide moms in this country and in our culture. And I decided to focus on that. So I pursued my clinical credential. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I also got certified in perinatal mental health, and I did a lot of volunteering and other trainings on this topic, and it is extremely rewarding to be able to be someone's therapist and their advisor and their support system. And I pride myself in having a very comprehensive network of additional providers, whether it's a psychiatrist, pelvic floor therapist, nutritionist, whatever it is that the person needs. And together we can really be a care team.
It's great that you have like other resources for them, because I think that's really important to find those other resources, because it's usually not just one thing that you're treating.
Yeah, and we all deserve that comprehensive care.
Sure.
And it's okay to need extra support. Again, of course you need extra support when you're going through a big life change.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to have you on during National Wellness Month. What do you think that means to you?
I think wellness means feeling neutral to good and knowing what you need to feel better when you don't. I am an optimist, but I'm also conscious of this sort of toxic positivity. I don't think every day needs to be, amazing, because that's just not reality. But I think that something should make you smile every day. I think joy and levity and lightheartedness is important. I think social connection and being outside is important. And again, you don't have to be so happy and obsessed with everything in your life all the time, because that's not realistic. But you also shouldn't be feeling dread and a pit in your stomach if you're going to work, or being with quote unquote friends who don't actually make you feel good. That's not a form of wellness.
I love that. Anxiety and depression are serious health conditions, and that's something, if you qualify for Connecticut paid leave, it covers you with 12 weeks of income replacement. So you can take time away from work when you need to get treated from a mental health professional. And you live in New York State. They also have a paid leave program there. How valuable are these programs to people that you treat in Connecticut and New York and New Jersey who have these paid leave programs?
Invaluable, tremendously valuable. It's hard to describe and certainly impossible to quantify the necessity of programs like these. I work with many moms who constantly are complaining about the fact that their partners are back at work, that they feel abandoned, they feel alone, they feel like they're made to be the default parent when they were looking for a partnership. And this is not their partner's fault, it's the system, right? We know that all members of the family benefit when parents get paid leave. The baby's health is optimized, mother's maternal health, father's able to bond with baby, and beyond the caregiving leave, as you mentioned, when it comes to taking care of yourself, it's not that easy to do when we are in this hustle culture and don't have much time. And we need that time to care for ourselves. And it's such a valid investment, and usually a short-term investment for long-term payouts.
I'm so glad that you are an advocate for it and you see its worth.
I absolutely see its worth. And I think that we are getting better as a culture, but we still have a long way to go. And it's not just mental health, which is tremendously important, of course, but it's also gender inequities in general, because if the mother is the one who gets access to leave, she does become the default parent because she's the one at home. And that's not fair. That's not equitable. And so we do want to have everyone have access to it, so that the family can benefit and that society in general can be more equitable.
Yeah, and I think the fathers with the bonding leave, it's super important,
Absolutely.
Super important. Well, let's focus on your book. How did you become an author, and how did you come to write Millennial Menopause, Preparing for Perimenopause, Menopause, and Life's Next Period, which is so clever?
Thank you. I love puns. As I mentioned, have always been passionate about women's rights and reproductive health and reproductive rights. And I have been focusing on the perinatal period. I'm a mom of a 9-year-old and 6.5-year-old. So my kids are young. I'm 40. And as I approached 40, I realized that while I had learned a lot about that phase, the reproductive years, I really was in the dark about what was coming next. And I've always loved writing. It's been a passion of mine. A lot of wannabe writers do go to law school, so there's something there. And I wrote an article for an online magazine called Mama Beasts about millennials and menopause after going to a networking event with Ann Fullenwider, who co-founded Alloy, which is a digital health platform for midlife women. I was really struck by the advice I kept getting from the older women in the room of, I wish someone had told me about this. I wish I had known, all of these things that they were saying. So I wrote an article, and then that turned into an opportunity to write a book. And it's been such a pleasure to ask all the questions and interview 4 dozen experts in women's health and get the answers that we need. Even though every woman will experience menopause differently, our generation really did need a guide to know where to look for help, what was going on with us, and to not be caught off guard like the women that I had met had been.
Were there any stories that really resonated with you? Was there any that really stood out to you when you were writing this book?
So many stories, and it's such a pleasure to be able to share women's stories with other women so that we can all learn from each other and support each other. I would say that as a therapist, of course, I was struck by how much the menopause transition can impact our mood and our mental health. This is something that mental health professionals and medical professionals are not taught nearly enough about. And we're working on changing that. There are advocacy groups, there's medical professionals lobbying for change in training programs. I teach a lot of other mental health professionals now about menopause symptoms and resources. But I was really particularly struck by several women who told me that they had tried a variety of psychiatric medications. They had been to inpatient programs. They had tried so many things to just feel like themselves again. And then it turned out that they were in perimenopause, which no one had mentioned to them, not one doctor. And once they did start hormone therapy, they felt tremendously better. And it's that lack of awareness that really can be quite dangerous. And we need to raise awareness in order to help women not go through what they had gone through.
Yeah, I think that there should be a handbook, or there should.
Well, that's my book.
And it's so interesting because no one does prepare you for that. No one has that discussion, or everybody has a baseline mammogram, but no one has a baseline perimenopause, menopause setup, which they really need to, because there's so many different things that can happen to you. And that can really affect women who are still working, and they have to take time off from work, and they have to get treatments. And so I think some can be much more serious than others. But I do feel like, I love that you wrote this book, because I do feel like it needs to be addressed more, especially with medical professionals who can say, hey, you need to take time away from work. You need to focus on yourself.
Right. And to your point about taking time from work, so many women in midlife feel that they have to leave the paid workforce because they're having these struggles, and they don't have time to go to all these doctor's appointments and be working, or they're telling themselves, my brain fog is so intense that I can no longer do my job, or work is just not a comfortable place for me to have a hot flash, or whatever it might be. And they're leaving the workforce, or they're cutting back, but it's not really on their own terms. And of course, that's such a loss of talent, of financial potential, growth in one's career, etc. So it doesn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. Programs like paid leave can certainly help. Other employee benefits programs can certainly help. And again, that simple awareness of, if you're not feeling good, you don't have to suffer through it. These are some resources that can help you and then help you thrive at this phase in your life.
Tell me, as a writer, what the process of how you got your thoughts into book form. I know that you said you wrote for blogs, and I'm sure that helped you, and I'm sure your law degree probably helped you with this. But what was the process for you?
Sure. So for this book, it's nonfiction, and I did find that having a chapter outline helped me organize my thoughts, because I knew I wanted to focus on mental health in one chapter specifically, and media in another, and talking to men in another. So then when I interviewed all of the experts, I asked whatever questions they could answer, or I thought that they would be helpful in answering. And then I fit in their quotes and my thoughts and other studies I had read, et cetera, into each theme. And that was really helpful for me. And I don't want to make it sound easy, but I do think that if you are a reader, if you love reading, writing perhaps comes more naturally than to someone who is not a big reader. And I've always had my face in a book. So
You were working as a counselor writing this book, and you're a busy mom. How did you juggle all of that and still have time to sit down and write a book?
So two ways. One is I have an actual partner in my husband who knew that this season of life would be him more on duty than equitable in terms of bedtime or weekends, because I found that I really needed large chunks of time to write. It wasn't like I could fit in a chapter in between clients for an hour. I had to really have that flow space, which is, of course, very difficult for any parent of young children to get. So he did a lot of bedtimes, weekends, that kind of thing. And my kids were really supportive of this project as well. And then the other thing is that I did kind of cut back socially on getting together with girlfriends, which I don't take lightly or for granted because my friends are tremendously important to me. But that being said, they knew that I was not abandoning them. I was just working and not going out for dinner or whatever it was. And they have been cheering me on every step of the way. And now I'm on a book tour and they come to all my events and we have a lot of fun. So everything is temporary. And I think if you communicate that and remind yourself of it, it'll all work out.
My friend who's a therapist saw a therapist because you take on people's emotions in that job. I think a lot of therapists see therapists. Do you think that that's a valid thing?
Yeah, no, I think it's so important. Just like a personal trainer, goes to the gym. We have to take care of ourselves, and a physician sees another doctor. You have to know yourself. And I think this is what you were saying before about kind of having a baseline before perimenopause. That's what I always advise is the number one takeaway from my book as well, which is get to know yourself, your mood, your body, your physical symptoms, your sleep patterns, because if something starts to change and you don't like how that's feeling, it's time to speak up. You don't have to get to the level of suffering or of meeting certain diagnostic criteria to reach out for support. If it's just different and you don't love it, help is available.
What surprised you writing this book, Lauren?
I was surprised to learn that perimenopause can last for many, many years, often starting in one's late 30s, early 40s, which is my cohort. I was surprised that the range of symptoms were as broad as they are. I didn't, like I said, know about the impact on mental health. And I now, of course, see it in my clients who are aging with me and in perimenopause. And a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have been able to recognize it as that. So I'm so happy that I am now.
And who is the book meant for?
The book is primarily targeted for millennials who are born between 1981 and 1996, but it absolutely can and should be read by anyone who cares about millennials, cares about women's health. There's a chapter specifically for men who care about millennial women. I have many friends in their late 40s, early 50s who are benefiting from reading the book. So I do think anyone can and should read it. It's full of a lot of pop culture references that make it a light and fun read that millennials in particular will appreciate, but I think anyone would like it.
What are some of the pop culture references? Now I'm interested.
So, I mean, the first sentence is a reference to the movie Mean Girls. There's some reality show tidbits, some boy bands references, all kinds of TV shows, movies, things like that.
Oh, that's great.
I love that stuff.
How has writing this book changed you as a counselor and as a person?
It's just part of our health, right? It's nothing to be ashamed of. When we're talking about paid leave, actually, I helped lead a movement in my two different law firms, actually, to get better paid leave policies for parents back when I was in law firms. And I think it's really important to talk about these issues almost not when you're in the thick of it, because then they are less personalized and feel less urgent. but you know that women will experience them and that it's sort of on the right side of history. So I've always been like this, but I'm even more comfortable, even more dedicated to talking about all of this. And then in terms of my practice, it's just something that I continue to see with many of the women that I work with. And of course, I'm able to help them feel better and refer them to the right prescribers and other providers who can help them optimize their health.
I know you released this book last month in July and are promoting your book, but are you already thinking about your next book, which I think you probably are?
How did you know? Yes, I am. I loved this opportunity because I really did write the book I needed. And I got many questions from all my friends and acquaintances. And I said, I want to get all these questions answered. And I have other ideas along the same lines of, what's going on here and who do I have to talk to get the right information that's science-backed, but not punitive, and to really build community around women's health issues. That's always a goal of mine.
And that's important, right? Building your community. I think that, if you, like you said, you miss seeing your girlfriends and going out with your girlfriends. I think it's so important as we age that those female connections are so much more important.
So important. Absolutely.
And what are you hoping comes from being on this podcast?
I hope that women feel like they aren't alone in whatever wellness struggles they're experiencing, that they know that resources are available and that people also struggle when they go through tough times, but we're in this together. We are a community.
And I feel like there's a process when you write a book or you're writing blogs and writing in general. It can really be cathartic. Were there different emotions there for you when you were writing this and finishing it?
Absolutely. I was open about that, I think, in the book. And you see where I'm very much myself in the book. It's my authentic voice. So, I hope people like it because it's very me. But I have no regrets because it's authentic and honest. And so I would say things, when I learned about the implications of menopause on one's heart health and cognitive health, I would say things like, wow, this is pretty scary. What are we meant to do? This is overwhelming. And then with the resources that I gathered, I felt a bit better and I would express that. And I hope that the reader feels a bit better as well.
I really love the whole thought process of how you really kind of researched it and did all that and then wrote this book. I just think it's really thoughtful.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and being on a book tour and connecting with so many women and men. Men are coming to my events, my old friends, new people's spouses or men in their lives, they're coming. So I'm meeting with so many people who care about these issues, other providers, and it's just been such a beautiful gift, and I'm happy to be out there connecting.
Lauren Tettenbaum, social worker, lawyer, counselor, and now book author. Thank you so much for being on the Paid Leave podcast. It was such a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you for having me.
For more information or to apply for benefits, please go to ctpaidleave.org. This has been another edition of the Paid Leave podcast. Please like and subscribe so you'll be notified about new podcasts that become available. Connecticut Paid Leave is a public act with a personal purpose. I'm Nancy Barrow, and thanks for listening.